Awesome. Maybe Laya, you'd like to just quickly share the background of Umpukan and what Umpukan actually is, because a lot of our friends here are quite
Oh,
been used to the
yes.
word.
Nayon means the community, and Umpukan means gathering. So it's basically community gathering. It's a series of public consultations that's been going on since last year for the conceptualization of a creative hub that happens to be an urban forest also. So the whole thing, the entire thing is a creative hub. It just happens that nature seems to have restored itself by now, so that there are a lot of native birds and trees, and it's also very near wetlands. That's where the site is.
Thank you, Laya. Just a quick recap. Thank you once again, everybody, for being here. And we are excited to have you here. So just how we will be doing the questions and the question discussion portion, rather, excuse me, is that I'll ask the question. Then you guys can just, organically chime in what your answers are. We have roughly 10 to 12 minutes per question, not per speaker. So um, we would love to, though, sometimes we can't help it if we really become passionate about it. So that's really fine. But yes, so I will be, when I feel that we've had good meat taken on that point, on that question, then we'll be moving on. I'll be asking the next question. And I might be most likely asking questions also from the audience, because we have audience, we have viewees who will be throwing in questions because they'd love to hear your insight on certain topics as well. So I hope that's all okay with you guys. I am so excited, and I hope we can actually meet when this is, when we are allowed to travel and we will not be quarantined 14 days going into each other's countries and 14 days coming back to our own. Okay, so we are starting the webinar in 1 minute. May I request everybody to turn off your video cameras, and then we'll have, thank you so much, guys.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Umpukan sa Nayon, or Community Gathering. This is simply titled The NPF as a Creative Hub. I'm Laia Bukiren, and I am just one of the many contributors to the programs of Nayong Pilipino, inspired by its mission and vision. So let me first start by sharing our aspirations for the future and our past. First, our vision. By 2029, we envision Nayong Pilipino to be a recognized hub for research, innovation, and training on cultural heritage through the creation of spaces and platforms for creativity development and recreation. And then perhaps let me share a bit about our history. Nayong Pilipino was created through Presidential Decree number 37, issued on the 6th of November 1972. It was mandated then to initiate research and take on development projects in the field of the social sciences and humanities. And so, alongside this, the purpose of the creation of the foundation then was to establish park and recreation centers for the promotion of tourism in the country. A park for the foundation was inaugurated at that time, even 2 years prior to the promulgation of the decree. At that time, it was situated near Manila International Airport and aligned to the creation of the foundation. The concept for the design of the park by national artist I.P. Santos was to represent the Philippines through architectural and cultural displays, an aviary, aquarium, fishing lagoon, and a diverse plant collection containing flora and fauna, species found in territories of the country. So at that time, there were also retail shops featuring Filipino creativity, handloom weaving classes, music groups for social amelioration, a museum for Philippine traditional culture, a mini library, and various alternative learning programs that incorporated Filipino games. So there was this whole range of activities going on at that park at that time. Various locations in the park were used also for shooting films and shows. So that was before. And then around 2000, year 2000, the Manila International Airport Authority proposed to occupy parts of the Nayong Pilipino in Pasay to comply with safety standards. And the transfer of the land happened, leading to the closure of the theme park and many concessionaires. And then it transferred to Clark, which is in Pampanga in Region 3. So eventually, under the previous administration, before the current one, the new Nayong Pilipino was set to rise on a 9.5 hectare property in this time in Parañaque City, so back to Metro Manila, and this time a 9.5 hectare property. It's incidentally 2 kilometers away from the Las Piñas Parañaque critical habitat and ecotourism area, also known as the La Papachea. By the way, the La Papachea would be protected wetlands designated to be of international importance under the Ramsar Convention. Just to let you know, this property is a home for native birds and occasional migrant ones. And then over the past few months, while in ECQ or enhanced community quarantine, in other terms, lockdown, the Nayong Pilipino Foundation property has grown into a lush forest and it has an ecosystem of its own. At present, there are 460 tag trees right at the heart of a city. It's also one of the last remaining grasslands in once reclaimed site in an area in Parañaque City. So just to let, for the information of everyone, the current administration around 2019 approved plans to build a park. However, plans were deterred because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is what happened so far. And this is the story of Nayong Pilipino Foundation concerning its property in Parañaque City. In response, a quarantine facility was built on the property in Parañaque, and this was part of government's isolation strategy. So for now, it is a healing space, and we are very supportive of government efforts in addressing our public health crisis. The Department of Tourism endorsed the initiative for the construction of a free and temporary vaccination center in the NPF property, being an attached agency of the Department of Tourism. So it is in this sense that we are a healing forest situated in a very busy metropolis. So as we all work together in healing the nation, we want to envision a more sustainable future and achieve our sustainable development goals by making cities and communities a better place. And we believe that creatives can help us realize that dream. And hence, we're having this community gathering, more of a round table to be exact. So, we wish to have a creative hub, an aggregator of creatives, scientists, historians, heritage professionals, that will be a place for nature and culture, accessible to all, including visitors to our country. We wish to be a creative hub that can provide opportunities for research-based creations, talent fostering perhaps, trainings, partnerships and linkages, and the means to stimulate creativity, all surrounded by nature. And we believe that creatively, we can green and heal as one. The Heritage Space program this year will have a multimodal approach, both offline and offline, as we continue to generate meaningful interactions and creative partnerships. So the set of efforts under this program that we have, the Heritage Space program, includes Umpukan sa Nayon, or community gathering. Basically, it's a series of public consultations we've been having since last year for the conceptualization of the physical development and the development of programs for the Nayong Pilipino Foundation property in Parañaque. So I really thank our distinguished guests for this afternoon. Good day to you. We're in different time zones at the moment. And we also want to acknowledge our partner, SIKAP, for this afternoon for helping us put this Umpukan sa Nayon, or roundtable discussion together. So I'd just like to remind the attendees this afternoon, at the end of the session, we would very much like to hear from you, to hear from your feedback and improve our Umpukan sa Nayon roundtable discussion. So if you would kindly answer the feedback form at the end of this roundtable, and those who entered the Zoom room and answered the feedback form would be given certificates of attendance. Now, so again, thank you everyone for registering for Umpukan sa Nayon. Just to let you know, this is also the first iteration of Umpukan sa Nayon for 2021. It's been 3 months and we are glad to be back. And we are glad to have the first Umpukan sa Nayon in partnership with SIKAP. So, without further ado, let me first introduce the moderator for this afternoon. I am very pleased to introduce Magu del Mundo. He is a consultant on IP ecology, strategy, and development. He does business development in IP ecology for several animation studios, as well as comic creators, both in the Philippines and abroad, and is the co-founder and current president of the Creative Content Creators Association of the Philippines, or SIKAP. They are part of the advisory board of the British Council's Creative Communities Learning Labs. We look forward to invite British Council also in the future. Magu is also one of the lead producers for SoundMind Music Productions. It's a specialized sound and music project studio alongside veteran composer and sound designer James Amargo. Magu has written for both local and international video games, TV shows, movies, musicals, and live events. So his instrumental debut album, Speaking in Tongues, is currently available on digital music platforms like Spotify, Amazon Music, iTunes, and Apple Music. So do search for that. So I have the happy task of turning over the virtual floor to Magu del Mundo. Hello, Magu.
Hi, Laya. Thank you so much. And thank you for that plug-in. By the way, that's unpaid advertising right there. Thank you so much, Laya, for that. Please allow me the opportunity to quickly thank everybody for allowing SIKAP to partner with Nayong Pilipino as we start Umpukan this year. And then I think it's a really important opportunity for us to find out how creatives can really be part of this healing forest, this urban forest, and this space for creators that Nayong Pilipino is building. So without further ado, please allow me to quickly introduce our speakers this afternoon, our resource speakers. First off, we'd like to welcome Jasny Zain. He's from the Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, where he is the Strategy and Ecosystems Development Head. Hello, Jasny. Good afternoon to you. Next up, we have Antoine Nguyen from the Heritage Space. He's the artistic director, and Heritage Space is based in Hanoi, Vietnam. We also have with us this afternoon Jing Tai Chan from the Silver Media Group. He's the founder and CEO, based out of Singapore. We also have the ladies from Da Nang Thuy, Hugh Nguyen, who is the founder and managing director, and Nguyen Ngo, who is their communications director. Hailing from the Philippines, from Cebu, who is the founder of Caracoa Productions, we have Minxie Villaver, who is an amazing thespian and a person who really inculcates heritage in what she does. And we also have Chris Dumlao, who is a producer from Compilan Productions, based in both the US and in Manila. So thank you everyone for being here. Good afternoon to each and every one of you. So yeah, you guys can unmute your mics if you guys want. So how will we be doing this facilitation? Just also for the audience to know is that I'll be asking a question, then the speakers can just come in and just answer, give their thoughts and reflections on the topic at hand. So for those of us who are watching here in the Zoom room and those on Facebook Live, please feel free to ask your questions or send them in the chat box. And we have people from Nayong Pilipino and from the staff who will be collating all these questions and hopefully sending them to me. So let's just get into it. So everybody here, I guess for most of us, Nayong Filipino is something that is new, that we've encountered recently. So with what Laya mentioned earlier, how would any of you think, how do you think Nayong Filipino should, set itself apart as a creative hub based on what it plans to do with its, on what programs or what resources you think would be best for Nayong Filipino to set their hub apart? And maybe you could start off with Chris Dumlao to give her thoughts on that.
Yeah, hi, Mugu. Thank you. I think what Nayong Filipino can do to set it apart, actually reading up on the documents or documentation regarding Nayon, it is unique in a sense that it combines cultural preservation as well as natural preservation. So it is unique in that sense where it's a space that both natural things and man-made objects can come together and be preserved in unity and in harmony. So it's usually just a gallery, or it's usually just an eco forest or a conservation park. But uniquely, Nayon can combine the two because of its mandate, because of how it is built. So I think that's the strength that they have. They can combine both and in a space, and then they can put all these people together, both the scientists, the naturalists, the anthropologists, archaeologists, creators, artists, all of them in one space. I think that's what's going to make them be unique in this sphere.
Magu, you're on mute.
Magu, you're on mute.
Sorry about that technical difficulty. So thank you for that. Is anybody else would like to share their thoughts on how they think Nayong Filipino can position itself specifically?
Yeah, I'd like to share.
Sure.
Yeah, firstly, I apologize that somehow my camera is not working, but you're not missing much. You're not seeing me. Yeah, I mean, first thing I have to say about what you guys have here is really special, right? Coming from this small little country called Singapore, we can never have this much space, creative hub together with a preservation of nature. That can never ever happen in Singapore. So congratulations on setting up this incredible facilities and program. And when I was thinking about how can it distinguish itself further, I think, like I said, the setup itself is really special. But I think bringing it further would be, how do you go from preservation to popularization, right? Because a lot of times we talk about we need to preserve, we need to protect, right? But a lot of preservation is done by a few people who really want to protect it, protecting it from people who don't really care about it, right? But how do we, in fact, make people fall in love with nature? How do we make people fall in love with culture? And then they become people who wants to not just protect it, but to also propagate it, right? So, so when I look at, let's say, some other successful programs, whether it's in nature or in creatives, in other parts of the world, it's not just always how do we protect things, but how do we make it reach out to the masses? So of course, if we talk about, let's say, the Korean phenomenon that's sweeping across the world right now, right? They are actually the Korean population is actually relatively small compared to a lot of other bigger countries. But right now, their culture is spreading all across the world because of their ability to popularize it, right? Suddenly, everyone wants to eat Korean food because of how Korean culture has become popularized. So what I would like to see is how the NPF can look beyond preservation, but bringing but bringing this cultural things they want to protect to the masses and make them fall in love with it. Yeah.
I think that's a very, very beautiful insight and reflection, Jinkai, with what you just said. And I guess that is something that we should really consider. I guess especially now where we have a lot of people who, especially in the Philippines, where they tend to consume a lot of culture from outside of the Philippines, right? You have a lot of consumption coming in from Japan, from Korea, from China, also from Malaysia. So it would be, I guess that's a nice thing for us to think of, how to make culture propagate, how to make the arts propagate, and at the same time, how to make the Filipino creatives, be strengthened by engaging with the other people in their community, fellow Filipinos. With that question, maybe because all of you here have your own respective hubs, are leading or part of your own associations or creative hubs or groups. So, as a creative, what do you think Nayong Pilipino as a facility would need to be able to address people from your respective creative groups? Maybe Jesse, you have something to share with us, some thoughts on that matter.
Sure, thanks. And for Magoo and for the team, thank you for inviting us. The perspective from my organization, the Malaysian Digital Economy Corporation, MDEC, is admittedly it's public sector driven. It's a government view, but I think it probably might have a useful perspective for how Nayong can probably view expanding its space and its role into the conservation effort. And I think the biggest part to get that is what was mentioned earlier, which is about getting a community galvanized by putting together the value in some commercial terms, because that attracts, I mean, unlike anything else, I mean, having a great grassroots movement is fantastic. Having a great concept of conservation and heritage is great. But at the end of the day, having a commercial angle or something that would drive private money investment in, it just adds the multiples in that gives you the value that you will need. So in what we do in Malaysia, and we strive hard to follow what was the Korean model as well, actually. Use very heavy public sector investment, try to get as much leverage as we can for our creators to come and build their great ideas, IPs and animation and games. But bottom line is that everyone has to be commercially ready and be able to stand on your own feet at the end of the day. And I think that's probably what you can do as well in your space. While there's a great effort to make this something of a more of a heritage-driven effort, but commercially driven, I think that's probably the angle that we should come from. And it's weird coming from the government saying this, but I think that's that's essentially the most effective use of the power of what you have right now. You have the eyeballs, you have the traction, then let's try to convert that into something that we can make money out of.
I agree with you on that one, Justin, because I think one of the most important aspects is the sustainability, right? And that will work hand in hand with the innovation, and that will cause the engagement. So yeah, maybe I see anybody. Minxie, I think you'd like to respond to that. Yes.
Hi. In connection to what Jasny said, I also agree that we should be looking at the prospect through a commercial lens. And through that, I think this will be touched in another question, in a future question, wherein we're going to tackle about emerging trends and what's popular right now. Because based on what I have observed among Filipino youth, I mean, they're what's driving commercialization, consumption of media right now. And what they really want is the visual aspect. So I think with Korea right now and Japan, even China, but they're pretty secret. But even my sister currently has Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok, and they're very good at the visual aspect. So I bet how we can translate this in the Philippines is we translate our heritage visually and always show that, I mean, display that everywhere, like modernize our native houses, show fashionable clothing that are also native inspired, display what's cool about us, what's cool about our culture. That's what actually inspires the youth to keep preserving it. Because right now what they're seeing is it's just history. We were actually taught, sadly, that it's just history and we should move on. And that's actually sad. And I can't really blame them because it's part of the system. It's how we were educated, sadly. But currently, the way they're actually, the way they're so, what do you call this, drawn and inclined to appreciate the cultures of other countries is the mainstream, like the way the mainstream displays them, music, films, games, graphics, even comics, even memes. We should ride the trends. We should ride how social media is currently booming and translate that into the Philippine setting. I think that's pretty cool because that's also what we're doing in our own group, and it's working. It's really working. In just a year, we gathered a lot of traction, and we just, like, whatever's trending right now, we add a Filipino twist to it. We add a native twist to it, and it works. So right now, what I'm also seeing is there's a really, really huge demand for native Filipino films that actually give justice to our culture, to our heritage, and not something that's hastily done, not something that's done without proper research, something that's actually faithful to material, because even our festivals are not faithful to material. What people really actually see, what people actually want is something that came from the ancient times and is now materializing right before their eyes, and something that they can be really proud about. Warriors, fashionable royals, games, really cool stuff. That's what the youth wants, because we should be, what I really believe is that we should be targeting the youth, because like years from now, they will be our leaders, and whatever they find cool right now, whatever they find trending, whatever they find useful to their identity will be what's going to be used in the future for the Philippines. So the Philippines has a huge lack in that area, but there's a huge demand. There is an audience waiting for us. We just have to cater them. Thank you. That's what I think.
Thank you very much, Maxi, for that. The ladies from Danang Tue also raised their hand a while ago.
Yes. So here I can see your questions about for the foundation to be a place that people would like to visit and to enjoy it. So to me, I think the foundation is kind of a creative hub And a creative hub is to create a community for social relationships and social bonds. But to me, community is not a place, it's a feeling. It's a feeling of one feel about like an entity, feel about Nayong Foundation. And if there is one thing I want, like I think a reason for someone to enjoy to visit Nayong, it should be the feeling of that person towards the place. I would suggest a feelings of belonging that I feel a connected feeling to this entity, to the area, to the Nayong Creative Hub. And to me, I think I would suggest an approach of from human to human approach is from the staff, the people from Nayong, how they greet, how they meet the visitors of that coming to the Nayong. And with this, because I think the thing that Nayong has, but the other creative hub may not have it, is your staff. And such human resources would be the most unique point to support your place. Thank you.
Thank you so much, you. Actually, so it's interesting because what I've been hearing now is that there is this great need for us to really marry our heritage, our culture with a very forward-looking, forward-looking face, so to speak, right? That we like Jasmine pointed out, it's important for us to think of the sustainability of the place, and that's where what Minxie also said a while ago, that what we also need is to be able to make the Filipinos now, or those who will engage, the creators who are going there, to provide them with equipment and technology that will allow them to modernize or make relevant what is Filipino culture to the people today. Yeah, and I totally agree with what Hugh said, that there has to be an emotional connection. So it's not just an issue of the space having the proper equipment, or being equipped properly, but it's also having that sense of belonging, sense of ownership, that sense of relationship. Yeah, like what you said, that kind of relationship that we have. Yeah, I'm loving the input, and maybe Andy, you have something to add to the discussion on the place. Tuan?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I have some when I just talking about the sustainability is like I share a little bit in Vietnam, in Hanoi, that's the creative hub. There's the kind of Chinese thing.
When I think you cut out. I think there's a drop in the internet connection. Oh, hopefully the internet comes back and works. So we will. Oh, Tuan, sorry, there, you're back. So sorry, you dropped out. Could you kindly repeat what you were saying?
Yeah, I'm sorry, maybe because of my internet signal.
No worries, all good.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to show my agreement with the idea of justice, that we should develop the business model with the cultural model, the creative model. That's the thing that we learned from the lesson in Vietnam, that because a lot of creative hub appear and disappear in the very short term. And also one thing I would like to add into kind of keyword into the creative hub is should have the participation, inclusive participation. It's and it needs the investment in research on what do you have, is what is characteristic of the land, the history, the community there, and developing on the need of the community. It's a kind of mutual need and let them to participate and have the engagement time by time. And it should not be a quick process. It should take time. It should take time and to let people to get the mutual understanding, mutual benefits to the artist, to your organization, and to the community, and naturally develop and make it in the diversity way. So we could not need the fancy facility to serve all the artists. The artists should be come there and learn how to take the advantages and to work with the community in your organization with the very special characteristic of geography and location and that. So it's then it's also a slowing development. It's also the way we can control the resources, control the investment, and also learn how to sustain. So that's what I think.
I think that's a very wonderful insight, that the importance of having your creatives and your creators come there, more than just the equipment, more than just the facilities per se. It's really going to that space, and it's really seeing how they can maximize what's there. And I like the part where you emphasize that it's going to grow organically. It's not going to happen overnight, right? It'll take time, and that is also something that we really should do our research on, like what you said. So, yeah, very, very wonderfully put. Thank you so much for that. So allow me to just ask the next question, which is, and I'd love to hear this from each and every one of you, because you guys come from different hubs and contexts and communities. So from where you are, what are the emerging trends you are seeing in terms of content creation? I'll stop the question there first. So, but yeah, what are you seeing in terms of those trends? Maybe Jasmine, you'd like to start that off.
Yeah, sure. And also circling back to what Ann said just now, he had a great point. But to your question first, I think in terms of trends, what we're seeing is throughout a very tough 2020. The definitely from the space that we see from the digital content side, animation and games, nothing much has changed trend-wise. I mean, in terms of content, if anything, the demand for animated content, which is the space that we cover the most in MDEC, has gone up. Digital consumption is up at record levels. I'm sure you all know the statistics. I won't bore you with all the statistics of how Netflix and other OTT streaming content producers are skyrocketing because of lockdown measures throughout the world. And even though we're lifting in phases and vaccination is happening, etc., we reach a new high in terms of digital content consumption, games or animation. So trend-wise, not so much, but not so much a change, at least from that. I'm not sure of live action or on other creative endeavors or creative fields. I wouldn't have as much perspective there. If anything, though, there has been a lot of technology movement and overlaps as content now is becoming increasingly digitalized. So we're seeing content creators actually embrace more. So while there was a big movement from the late 2015-16 as everyone was moving towards YouTube and trying to get yourself into a model of distribution, not just through a broadcaster. You start seeing people publishing themselves. This has accelerated. If anything, it has sped up. So you have the self-content creator. The YouTuber now is almost considered its own profession, so to speak. So that we see an uptick. The government of Malaysia is supportive of this. Certain programs that we've launched recently in effort to help creators throughout the pandemic involves certain incentives towards streaming or streamers and trying to help that. So I mean, those are the trends, I guess you could speak. But to what Ann said before I pass on the mic, I think it's a very good point. It's not what you build, it's not a facility you build, it's the community you build around. That is so much more important. Getting that magic dust formula is what you need, because you may build the prettiest building or the best statues out there, but it is the people who make up that. And I think, judging from a little bit of what I'm sensing from your session right now, you know, and having a roundtable like this, an open roundtable, it's really promising. I think it's how you get not just ideas, but how you get inspiration. So yeah, credit on you guys for that.
Thanks, Jasny, and well said. We really appreciate also all your inputs and all your insights. And it's interesting to note, though, that not much has moved in terms of content creation. But yeah, you're right. I mean, what there has been is an increase in content creators trying to get on that digital platform, right?
That's right.
So yeah, I'm actually curious. For those like the ladies from Danang Tui and for what Ann said, who are actually focusing on the cultural arts, right? So how has there any new trends that have emerged from your types of creators, for those in the cultural and more traditional arts? And are there any moves to digitize, or is there a migration for that?
Yeah.
Sure, Mingxi. Please go ahead.
Okay, who's gonna go first?
No, Danang Tui. Let the ladies from Danang Tui, then we'll have Mingxi, then Anne.
Okay.
Okay, so will we be speaking first, right? Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, as what we observe from the young audience here, we can see a really strong transformation in the knowledge, like in how the young people receive the content, like mostly digital content. For the past 2 years, we can see that YouTube and TikTok, especially in video format, they are booming and they are taking over the places. But last year, and especially during the first 3 months of June 2021, we can see that content creators are switching to podcast and other audio platforms. The recent emerging platform is a Clubhouse. Yeah, it's a podcast, like audio initiative platform. And we are seeing that the audience are seeking for more insightful and more like prepared content rather than just quick consuming content like the other years. So what we are doing is the same, that for our exhibition, we did a lot of research back on the history and culture dating back to 100 years ago. And what we found out is that the audience are actually liking it. Like they are really paying a lot of attention into those history and culture. So that's what we are thinking is the first one is the form is the audio, and the other one is in the content itself. It has to link back to what are in the past, like in the history and culture. And yeah, that's what our input is.
Awesome. Mingxi, we'd love to hear from you.
So far, I think in 4 years, 5 years since, we've seen a surge in arts appreciation, and that didn't exist like 10 years ago. Back then, in the Philippines setting, we always say arts is a useless course, arts is a useless profession, and you don't get money from arts. But right now, what we're seeing is like artists are creating this movement where they're demanding respect, and they are also essential to our daily lifestyle, especially in a pandemic such as this. So what we're seeing right now is there is much more demand for artists in many I think in many aspects, in many disciplines across our art. So that could be one example is I've seen reenactments go viral. For example, mythological reenactments, historical reenactments, or photo shoots of people dressing up as who they were from thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago. That's also trendy in China. There's a handful movement in China currently, and they have a lot of supporters. And I don't see why that won't work in the Philippines, because I think I've also seen a lot of startups pop up here and there in the sphere of fashion. So there are a lot of fashion designers who are currently taking aspects of culture wherever they're from. For example, they're Visayan, for example, they're from Mindanao, they're Moro. They're taking aspects of visual culture and infusing it with modern clothing, modern jewelry, or modern architecture even. So there is, I've also seen another trend where architects are currently rediscovering their own native identity. Like I think there were thesis awardees in a university where I'm from, where architects are more noticed when they use aspects of native heritage and then kind of like to illustrate. For example, a building where we use tapis shells and abaca and bamboo. I've also seen an architect in Malaysia who kind of did a 3D rendering where he did a mall made of with a lot of bamboo decor, and that was pretty cool. So there's also another trend I see is, of course, memes, and there are a lot of memes, historical memes. Mostly it's online right now. Also, YouTubers, streamers, and in the game, in the aspect of, let's say, games and films, historical films are actually, the demand for historical films and the appreciation has suddenly increased. There's Queen Victoria. In the Western world, Queen Victoria suddenly got a new, was it Queen Victoria, Queen Elizabeth, and even Princess Diana suddenly had their own renditions in Netflix. And in games, there's Valhalla from Assassin's Creed. There's Ghost of Tsushima. Those are all historical and cultural. And I think the youth is really, really amazed to see themselves and not be morphed toward a more unified culture where we're adapting. Because what we see right now is globalization. We are adapting cultures from different parts of the world, and I think what artists are currently being appreciated for is going back to their roots. I've seen that in photo shoots that suddenly got viral because it's amazing. Not many historical records were available like 20 years ago or 10 years ago, and now they're very much open all over the internet, and now anybody can access them and anybody can do their own interpretation, can do their own rendition, and produce something creative out of them. So I think that's, like, so far that's what I've observed in the creative sphere or creative scene in the Philippines.
Awesome, thank you, Mixie. Juan?
Yeah. So I would like to share one thing in my mind. Do you know SIKAP in Taiwan? Its a full name is the Taiwan Contemporary Culture Lab. This is the organization and to show the combination between the government support with the cultural organization. SIKAP is based in Taipei. It's based on the old airport military. It's a military zone. It's a kind of huge zone in Taipei. Then they converted the whole area with the old building to turn it into a center for culture, art, and technology. Then they call SIKAP. It's a laboratory to find the combination between the art and the digital technology and the different kind of cultural event. Then they create the festival for design for high technology in the way of contemporary arts. Then also they had the system of manage this kind of organization. Is very interesting that they show the tree of management on the website, that you can come to the website to learn that they under the control of the three ministry, the Ministry of Culture, Ministry of Economy, and Ministry of Technology and some like sign. Then they set up the director board, then run this organization as a non-profit organization, but focusing on promoting the culture and art and technology in the same time. So it's very close to the orientation of Taiwan, because Taiwan is very famous on technology, high technology. So I mean this case study can suggest is a kind of a way that cultural organization, our government organization can impact to to be act as a creative hub. So I guess that in your question, my thing is more focused on social impact, and that's the and arts and culture and technology or whatever, it really depend on the characteristic of the each country, each region, each location that you should find out. Then how and the question is how you engage it into the mission and your orientation and your program in your creative hub.
Thank you, Tuan, for that. It was very insightful, especially in how you are tying back how government and social enterprise and culture can come together. And that's an amazing answer for another question later on. But so we'll circle back to that. But from the ladies, what I've been hearing is that there's a lot of going back to the roots, going back to displaying the relevance of our history, of our culture, and connecting it with the medium that is consumed today, be it through audio streaming or memes or whatnot. For Jinkai and for Chris, because these are two who actually do production. So are there any emerging trends that you are seeing in your respective areas of animation and live action and TV shows?
Yeah. I'll just share about this, and I probably share from a wider, more philosophical point of view, if I may, right? So when we talk about how emerging trends, right? I think just now it was very correctly pointed out by Ming Si that now people are going into all sorts of very different things which were being considered very niche in the past, right? But because it's a globalized world, we can reach anyone. Even a niche audience can be millions, right? Because of how globalization works. But what happens with people being exposed to a very wide variety of different art forms, wide variety of different cultures, is that people go very broad, but people don't go very deep, right? And I'm speaking for a lot of people, including myself, right? Now I want to know a little bit about Korea, I know a little bit of Philippines, I know a little bit about Timbuktu, I know a little bit of everywhere, right? But I don't go as deep anymore because now it's easier for us to go very wide, right? So then the question posed is, and also because when you've got only a few minutes on YouTube and a few seconds on TikTok, you can't really go deep, right? So then the question is posed to the purist, right? How do you feel that now everything is just popularized and it's not exactly how history says it was? It's not exactly how it was done in the past, right? One example is for example the recent movie Mulan. Okay, I didn't really like the movie, but it was a commercial success, right? One of the things that was featured was Mulan's home, right? Is this circular earthen building that's quite unique in only a certain part of China, right? I took notice of it because my great-grandfather came from there, right? That area with those kind of, and he stayed in those kind of community housing that they had in the past. So it looks amazing. People are like, wow, it's like, wow, I didn't know that this kind of buildings in China and all that. So it got popularized. People thought that's interesting. I think I'm gonna go and see that in China one day. But then the purists were upset. The purists were, oh no, that's in the wrong era. The era when these tulos, they're called the tulos, the era when these tulos are built and Mulan's era were totally wrong. And the netizens started getting upset and making all sorts of noise about it, right? So when things get wider, right, and broader, sometimes it's not according to what really is true in how it was, right? So then are we able to accept that we will have to adapt what we have always had in the past in order to make it appeal to a wider audience to change it, right? And of course, to the purists is to bastardize it, okay? But to us, it is to commercialize it, right? I remember going to New Zealand some years ago, right? And then the Maoris were playing the music with the guitar. Then I think, okay, is guitar one of your, obviously it's not one of traditional instruments, why you're playing the guitar with your, together? He said, well, because our music was dying out. No one wanted to do it anymore. But after we introduced a guitar into it, everyone wanted to do it. So it became necessary. The purists were upset, but actually that helped preserve Maori music. So I think that's an important thing for us to think about, you know, as we try to preserve what we have and at the same time try to bring to the masses, what kind of adaptations are we willing to make, right, in order to keep up with the emerging trends?
That's a very, very good question, Jinkai, and something for all of us in our respective creative spheres to ruminate on. I'd like to ask Chris what her thoughts are on this topic, then we'll move to some of the audience questions.
Actually, I'd like to add on to what Jinkai said. He raised a very timely topic, in a sense that the purists versus the commercialization. So, you know, when we talk about creating content, there's always that ability for the audience to go back to doing research, or is this true? Is this facts? Is this fiction? Which for creators forces us to, how do we balance our creativity, pushing that envelope versus trying to be true to the resource of the content. So I think that's a trend that's coming up. The content creators or creators in general are a little more careful, or should be careful, because there is that immediate response from the audiences. I think for everywhere, now we're listening, the producers are listening to the audiences. Some content are being pushed forward because the audiences want it. So it's a little more audience centric rather than what the producers or the money wants to see or to be viewed. So there's that change in what should be produced or not, or what kind of content gets out there depending on the platform. And there's also that I think another trend coming out is the what I would like to coin as collaborative creativity, wherein because there is that wide a reach for content, and a lot of people are now more attuned to different kinds of content of different cultures, people get to engage more, and they're saying, hey, why don't we work together? Whether it's from technology, the technology side, whether it's their hardware or their software or their inventions with the stories or the creations of other creators. So I think that's a trend that we should look at. You'd see more people just working together, simply because, well, they're stuck in their homes. There's just nothing else better to do than to go online and just start collaborating with people and producing things.
Can I add something?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Because sometimes I'm also a freelance developmental editor for novels, and I'm also like a critic. So people come to me to critique their works. So usually when somebody does something like even if it's fantasy, even if it's fiction, because I major in literature, so there's this certain level of suspension of disbelief that you're allowed to do. You can make your own logic, you can make your own rules, you're the artist. But the thing is here, don't break your own logic, don't break your own rules, because then you would sound illogical, and people can, even the very nitpicky people can actually see that. So what I do is, I always tell writers and I always tell artists that research is very important. And I always say,
I think Mingxi's suffering from Philippine internet. Um, let's give her a few moments to come back online. Hopefully. And Mingxi, you're back. Yeah.
I'm back. So, yeah, there's a certain level of suspension of disbelief that you're allowed to do. You make your own rules, you make your own logic, as long as you don't break them yourself. And what I always tell writers and aspiring artists is that research is really, really important. It has become a meme now that writers even investigate murders or go to murder scenes just for the research part. And what I do is I ask them to research and be aware of, let's say, cultural sensitivities, because if ever you break something, like for example, you don't respect era appropriate factors or elements, there could be a tendency that there will be tribes that could get offended and they could ban your work. So there has to be this certain level of balance that you have to do. I also always say that creative freedom or creative license shouldn't always be abused. I mean, that's already in Britannica, that sometimes creative or poetic license is regularly used as an excuse for artists who do not research much. So what I do is I tell them to research a lot, be aware of cultural sensitivities, and follow your own logic, because there are already films, there are already creations by artists that are banned in certain countries that they wanted to honor and they wanted to appreciate, and then it totally went 360, I mean 180, because people don't like from the country itself that they're taking cultures from or inspirations from. The country itself didn't like it. So we also have to be careful. What I'm seeing right now actually is in a certain painting competition, and it had like a historical context that it was part of the guidelines. It has to be like historical. The panelists were professionals in their field. What I'm seeing is that artists should also know that they have a responsibility in culture preservation. We can't just abuse creative license. There has to be a balance. I mean, you just need to maybe like ask a critic or ask like for a second opinion what they think, or maybe ask somebody from the culture itself, so that you won't do any oopsies. I mean, maybe that's what Disney didn't do. That's why Chinese, or sometimes I also think Raya in The Last Dragon, there were a lot of Southeast Asians who also didn't approve some aspects of Raya. I mean, whether you believe it or not, but in the overall sense, Southeast Asians were overjoyed by the representation that Disney did. But there was just really some aspects, some parts of the animation, some parts of the design that didn't really sit well with other Southeast Asians. That's one of them is me and my sister and other Southeast Asians I know, in terms of costume design, in terms of architecture. There are other certain parts there that we should be careful about. And what I am actually concerned with Disney is that most of the Southeast Asians that maybe they hired already grew up in America and are already twice removed from the cultures that they grew up from, or maybe the cultures that they came from. So we maybe have to like ask or consult from the actual people who belong to this culture, or maybe ask their local historians, so that we can also do like, it's a matter of respect. It's a matter of respect.
Thank you, Mixi, for that. And it's a very good point now that there is also misusing cultural appropriation, and that is something that is that's right. As artists, as creators, that is something that we need to do. And rest assured that what Nayong Pilipino is doing is really helping people become more conscious of that effort within the Philippines. Sorry, just allow me to ask. There's a question from CNN Philippines for all the panelists, and those of you who would like to answer. What is, for you guys, what is the role of the creatives and the creative hub as a unifying entity in the overall development of society, particularly in your respective countries in this post-pandemic era? Maybe we'd like to start off with the ladies from Danang to start off this question.
So I think especially like in the questions, as stated in the question, like in post-pandemic era. So I mean, during this time, the physical thing like development is not really I mean, there is no chance or opportunities for other sector to grow, especially like the tourism. So what we can work on or focus on the soft power, especially the culture export and of one countries. So that is the way how creative and creative hub can work together on the soft and certain soft power on the culture export, and that can in the future can grow back to the grow for the society, for the common people during times that the other sector cannot supporting really well to the economy. That's what I think.
Thank you. Thank you. Very nice input. Jasny, would you like to share your thoughts on that?
Sure. I mean, I think in the in the pre-pandemic era, I mean that the role of hubs is it works. The whole point of stacking economic multipliers on each other as how other sectors have done it. It works in the creative sector as well. I mean, if we look at it's a seminal work by Richard Florida. I forgot the name of the book right now, but that template, Rise of the Creative Class. And I think what that template has shown is, geographical and proximity stacking one on the other of hubs. It works because you have, in essence, creatives working and feeding off each other and having the opportunities to work in creating or co-creating new and exciting stuff. This was the model that we did in Malaysia back in the day, right? So I would say in the up to the early 2010s when Malaysia launched its own animation hub of sorts called the Mac3 back then, now rebranded into Creative Inc. It started a journey for a lot of creators because it got people in a proximity, to each other, right? So you have students coming from college. You have people from the government, obviously from us, helping out, set the mentoring from other more established studios, and that feedback loop helps. So the question now is, what happens in the post-pandemic era when social distancing is now being part of the conversation, right? So it's a difficult question to answer directly, and it's something I think we're all trying to feel out as we go along. Does the role of hubs, of physical hubs, still play an important part? And I think the argument is yes, it's still important, but it has to be creative, so to speak. We are looking at it from a Malaysian point of view. We are trying to solve that as well. The aforementioned hub that was mentioned just now, Mac3 or Creative Inc., and its sister agent incubator, Level Up Inc. for the game sector has now been pivoted online to a digital form. And while there's a lot of physical loss of not having to be able to meet in the community, there's also a strange happenstance as is happening right now, which is that we're getting increased reach. I mean, Zoom is now, we're on Zoom right now, and Zoom is something that, if whatever platform you use, Cisco or Teams or whatever, it is something of the default mode that we are comfortable with, or getting more comfortable with. And that happens to be the same as well, in a creative sense as well. So the communities that we are reaching now is actually wider than before. We could not physically bring people to Kuala Lumpur before, everyone to Kuala Lumpur, but now we can reach other parts of the nation more effectively through a digital format. So, that is something that we're finding out. It works as well. Now, that will never replace physical proximity and hubs, and that would still remain a key feature. But what we're finding out from our experimentation of this, at least our journey right now, is that we're reaching more. Now, the quality of which is still yet to be determined. We're not sure how effective this is in the long run, but it seems to work. And I think we'll play it by ear as we go along on how we can continue co-creating creating a hub, but both in a hybrid format, somewhat physical, but somewhat digital like this. So yeah.
Chris,
I'd like to share. Sorry.
Sure, Jinkai, sure.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, the pandemic, right? So a lot of times we look at it from a very medical point of view, how many people fell sick, how many people died, or we look at it from a very economic point of view, how many jobs are lost, right? But I think we should also look at it from a very emotional point of view, right? And the statistics that a lot of people has gone into depression. The statistics that a lot of people have become very lonely. A lot of people are depressed, right? Upset, worried about the future. Marriages are breaking apart, right? So there's a lot. So the pandemic has created a lot of sort of emotional destruction in society, right? And this is where I think the creatives and the creative hub can play a role, right? Where we can really help people to see that, hey, what you're going through, we are going through it together, and we can overcome, right? Okay, so it may sound like plugging a project I'm doing, but that's something I'm trying to do right now. I'm trying. It's difficult, but I'm trying to put together a film right now called Love in the Age of Corona. So it's basically multiple short stories that I'm trying to shoot in 6 continents, right? That means out of based on one country in Africa, based on one country in South America and North America, yeah, leaving out Antarctica, right? So the reason I wanted to develop this was to see, okay, we can all be in different parts of the world, but we're going through the same disaster. But is this also through the same courage and the same faith, the same hope and the same love that we're going to overcome, right? So in a way, we can be so different, but this pandemic has unified us in a bigger way than ever. We are all going through the same experience. Is someone in Asia going through the same thing that someone in Africa is going through, right? And as I was trying to develop these short films with all of them, I discovered that we are facing the same things, and it gave me courage, right? And the goal of this short film was to study different people, right? And to see how, and each of the short films have the same arc, right? How they all had their different hopes and dreams, their way of life before the pandemic, how the lockdown started, how it disrupted what they wanted to do, and the end of lockdown, what did they learn? How did they grow out of it? Each character has their own arc, right? And I'm trying to assemble these 6 different short films into one film. For those of us here older, you'll remember a film called Love Actually, right? Where there are multiple short stories interlaced with each other, right? Starting and ending with a scene at the airport. So that, okay, let me do something like this. Different characters in different parts of the world now, exploring different kinds of love, not just romantic, but also paternal and maternal and altruistic and love for yourself. But how love actually helps us to overcome the different difficulties that we face. And just a love actually, it's just even be set in airports anymore, it's set in an opening Zoom call and an ending Zoom call, and how the different characters go through different parts, go through the different lives through this time. I was saying it was difficult to put together because now I'm trying to coordinate between 6 continents. So that is a crazy challenge. But it was an exercise that I wanted to do because I think this is something that we all can explore. How has the pandemic impacted our emotions, and how we as creatives can use our stories, be it film or written form or art, to really unify our societies and help us get to a better place.
Thank you, Jinkai. We have another question here. Chris, would you maybe you can start off answering this question. As creatives, creators, or as cultural hub managers, what kind of support do you think you need or is essential, especially now given the pandemic?
Well, during the pandemic, we sort of, as creators or creatives, we sort of went back to our roots. We became more creative in a way that whatever is available to us in our immediate space is what we use to create. It's what we use to tell our stories, and whatever platform is available, I think that's what we latch on to or try to adapt ourselves to. I think for Creative Hub, the kind of support that for me as a creator, I think of creators as they go through 3 processes, right? Ideation, create, and present. So it's a case of how in these processes, in these steps, can Nayong Filipino help us? So resources or venues for collaboration like this, to ideate, to talk about to talk with other creators, opportunities to create, whether it's in supporting in projects, whether it's financial or just connection, or continuously creating projects and programs for us to continuously create and be motivated to create. That's also something that that government support or institutional support can look into and to showcase. So I think, well, because a lot of venues are closed, we tend to showcase from our own homes, to present from our own homes. But to have platforms available, or to have opportunities to open up to these platforms, because not a lot of people know, not a lot of people have access. There's still parts in the country that don't have speed internet. So for them to have that equal opportunity and support to showcase their work, their culture, their heritage, to reach out, have that equal opportunity, which is the perfect time now, because of the pandemic, to have to be motivated to reach out. I think that's like also one support that institutions like this can do and can give out. Give that equal opportunity for all the creatives everywhere, everywhere they are, wherever they are in the country.
Thank you. Well put, Chris. We have a question here from Rafi from Palawan. It's okay. For everybody, with your line of expertise, how are you going to share your knowledge with Nayong Filipino? I mean, how do you intend to share the knowledge that you have with your respective creative hubs, with your background, with Nayong Filipino and the creatives that will be placed under its umbrella? Yeah, I mean, if anybody has.
What was the question again?
Sorry. Okay, so the question is for the panelists, how do you intend to share your knowledge of where you are, of what you've been doing with Nayong Pilipino and the creatives that will be joining under its umbrella? I think outside of this conversation that we're having right now.
As for what my group is doing, due to the pandemic, there has been the schedule has become hectic. There are cancellations, there are delays, there are postponements, and then suddenly collaborations pop up everywhere. But what we have been doing, for 2 years, is we just continue what we do. We offer workshops, we offer lectures, we offer discussions, we collaborate with schools, local schools, we collaborate with international people, international organizations who are also interested in the same advocacy. We also collaborate with another city government in order to because our field is mostly performing arts, visual arts. So we can if Nayong Pilipino would also require us to do something, we would offer whatever services, whatever fields or expertise that we're good at. So costumes, props, we have them, accessories, historically accurate accessories, resources, historical records, we have them, we have the collection. So they're usually just waiting right here, collecting dust because of the pandemic. But whoever is needing help, whoever needs input, whoever needs tangible objects that we have created in the past, we can offer them. So that's according to our expertise or field.
Thank you, Minxie. That's a very, very nice, tangible way to manifest that help. We have another question here coming from Luminot Pictures. And these are for our resource speakers who are not from the Philippines. How does your government support artistic and creative work in your country? What principles could the Philippines apply, particularly from what you guys are doing? I mean, are there any suggestions or ideas you could share with the government and how you support your artistic and creative work, or how it's done by your government with where you are?
I'll jump into that one. the role of government is unique because it's contentious. Surprisingly, when you are talking about a national agenda for many things, the creative industry is but one of many. And the narrative to fight for the creative industry from a government employee point of view, like mine, would be to try and highlight the benefits of what the creative industry can bring to the table. And everything that was discussed by today's discussion actually covers that, right? It's cultural. It's important to talk about heritage, and you know, to some degree, it has a commercial aspect to it as well. So those are the I would say, and if I could be so bold to say as advice to other government counterparts, or to anyone listening from that point of view, is to actually talk about those things. There is a certain economic return on commercial IP, and it's fantastic because, you know, you're creating an idea, and from that idea becomes something, you're birthing something into becoming, you know, a vehicle of just sharing, you know, your thoughts, your dreams, your hopes, but into something that translates into real economic opportunities for other people. And that conversation is what I think a lot of governments need to have internally. Now, we in Malaysia didn't do it instinctively. We actually had to follow on other countries too. And in fact, we're still learning from other countries. We run research activities every so often. From 2015, we tried to do one fairly routinely for the games industry, for the animation industry, Southeast Asia style reports. The reason for these reports are essentially to try and be the mouthpieces to talk to government to say why are these sectors important. And be the long-winded way of answering this question is, if we are talking about that, what are the key activities that, you know, governments should and could help creators? I think it's just to give them an opportunity, and that starts with obviously with funding or some sort of grant system, but it doesn't necessarily always mean money or grants and funding and such. It starts with actually with creating a community place. One example that Nayong Pilipino is doing is something that we did as well in some degree, where we try to create creative hubs together. Again, learning from Korea, right, where the masters of this who have done this really, really well. And that is another avenue. So one is creating opportunities for creators, again, be it by funding and etc., but also by having an environment where it's competitive and inclusive in its own way, meaning having a system where a government could assist local creators in getting their IPs showcased in some form or other. If it's live action, then maybe something to do with you know, theater, cinema, or something to do with broadcast belting on TV. But if it's something to do with digital, then something like you know, market access or providing opportunities for companies to sell their IP abroad, or to talk to YouTube, or to talk to create bridges with other players, broadcast players. So it's a big question, and it's something that it's something that we are always trying to steer. But the essential question is for the government person is, what is the value of the creative industry? And that's the one to answer. You answer that, you actually get the programs coming out of it, because the industry already has a voice. They will know what they want, and all the government has to do is listen to it and then selectively choose, but still, you know, be based out of the demand from the industry. So yeah.
Thank you, Jess. It's a very, very wonderful reflection and insight to share with us. Ladies from Datangwe, from Hugh and Ye.
Hello. So from our experience and perspective, I think our government still need a lot of improvements for its policy to support the creative practitioners in Vietnam. However, I will still share some of my experience when working with the government to asking for legal approval in order to organize the exhibition. They currently they do offer us an online application submit. So we don't need to go directly to the venue, to the government estate to submit those paperwork, and think it going online. So it would be easier for the submitting the legal, asking for the approval. And I think for my city, the officer here, they some of them, they are open and they are flexible, because I think when you do creative work, there are many forms that it hasn't existed before. I mean, like there are many forms of creative artwork that is not traditional or conventional, like pictures, photos. But the officers in the city, they are willing to ask and to know about those different types of work, such as like augmented reality with like the digital technology, with like advanced technology in the city, and they support the exhibition of us with those different types of work, of artwork. And I think the principles that the government should have is the ability to adapt and to be open to new work. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Jinkai.
Sorry, the question is, sorry, about what the creative can, the government.
How the government, how
Yes,
the government
okay.
can help the creatives.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I think that's always a very difficult thing to do, right? I'm in Singapore. There's the IMDA, right? And a lot of people in Singapore tap on money from IMDA, but yet grumble about IMDA all the time. Right? It is quite a thankless job sometimes, right? And Jasny might have felt that before as well, right? Yeah, but from my point of view, one of the things that I find the IMDA finally doing right, okay, recently, okay, in some ways, is looking at Southeast Asia rather than just Singapore, right? Going further, right? Because I feel like when everyone is just very inwardly looking, right? Then one is like, we're talking about Singapore culture. What culture does Singapore have? Two, we're talking about Singapore audience, we are just so tiny, right? And what happens is that if we look at Southeast Asia as a whole, we are like 640 million people, right? So this is a big market. This is something which we can, there's something that we can really learn a lot from with each other. There's going to be a lot of cross-pollination ideas if we really try to do something together, right? And we look at Raya and the Dragon, it's putting different elements of Southeast Asia together, right? If they want to put just one element from Philippines, I'm sure they can bring in a lot of things from Philippines. I'm sure they can bring in a lot of things from Thailand. But then it was something that shows, hey, well, you can actually combine elements from a lot of different countries in Southeast Asia and put something together, right? So I think it's a case of less nationalism and more collaboration, right? Of course, this is sometimes tricky for the government. It's like, but what if the money I spend, my taxpayers' money, as helping someone in another country, right? So that is something that the governments will need to overcome. But we know that the creative industry locally benefits more when it can collaborate with people beyond. So that is something that I think would be great for the government organizations to look at. I was sort of trying to get the Singapore government to look at it for the longest time. I talked to them for like 5-6 years and finally they, okay, yeah, I think we should look that way. I thought, oh, finally. Right? But I think the private sector has been trying to do that for some time now. And I think if the public sector can really support us in this as well from the different countries, I think that would be awesome.
Great, thank you, Jinkai. Tuan, you have your input?
Hello. Yeah, I would like to share a little bit from my viewpoint from the Vietnam art screen, as we are working on a lot with the government in terms of because we are in the independent art space and artists, and in Vietnam there's a kind of separated between the government sector and the we call independent sector. Then like Hiếu from Da Nang, they shared about their experiment in working with government. I guess it's a part of this something we call censorship, and it's really strong thing in Vietnam. But it really depends on the political circumstances that in Vietnam, because we are communist countries. It's different, and we don't take it in we don't not really focus it here. But it also the same that the being a creative hub in Vietnam, like I say, that is separated between the government sector and the private sector. So the resources, it also very separated to like the government sector. They have all culture and art association. Then the all of the support from the government just go through there. Then and as we are independent artists or independent organization, we can accept this kind of resources and support. So and also one other thing is the legal status and policy for culture and arts. It really a thing the government can develop then their law term policy to support an independent aspect. Like in Vietnam, there's like we are heritage PBR organization, but we run as a legal status as social enterprise, and we have to pay the tax, and the tax is the same other enterprise, and no differences. There is a big issue with us here, because we are working and we acting as a non-profit organization, but we have to pay the tax as a for-profit organization. Then this is the case in Vietnam, and but I guess and I hope that it should be different in different countries like you can kind of much easier to set up a non-profit or NGO organization. It is very important to reach to the grant, international grants. As for we have to pay if we would like to take the grant from UNESCO from Prince Cross, we need the legal status as a non-profit organization, and the international status is not local status, and it's possible in Vietnam. You know, in Vietnam, in the whole culture and art scene, that only one creative hub has its legal status, and it happened nearly 10 years ago. In this time, we couldn't get this kind of legal status. It's really typical political situation, but it just a thing we like to share. Then the legal status is very important for the international collaboration and for accepting to the grant and for different kind of things, work and art, and I mean not only the legal status but also the policy, and the law for the culture and arts. It's a very good way and a long-term way from the government. We should expect them to support us.
Thanks, Tuan. We just have time for one last question because we're ending. But so maybe we'll address this first to Minxie and to Chris, and then maybe the others who'd love to share, just a short insight on that. For the ladies from the Philippines, why do you think it's important for a government organization to establish a creator and creative space?
Minxie, go first.
Go ahead. Yeah, Minxie, go ahead, please.
Right now, based on what I've said about the trends of creatives and artists getting more attention, getting more recognition, the more the government ignores us, the more we're going to be proliferating and not having opportunities enough to actually achieve our potential and actually be happy about our careers. So also, the government, I don't want to say this, but I don't really know how to say this, but the government is composed of people who are really, really stuck in previous decades, and we need to change that. That's why we need a total overhaul of people. I don't care about your age, really. I don't care if you're old, if you're young, as long as you're open to the emerging trends of modernization, as long as you're willing to progress with us, because no matter how you hate it, whether you want to admit it or not, whatever worked 10 years ago or 20 years ago, it's not working anymore now. I mean, in our educational system, we're so stuck because I'm currently aspiring to be a college professor. And based on the classmates I have in master's class and graduate studies, they are usually working under our Department of Education, and they have so many complaints. Usually, my degree is arts related, and we are very, very disappointed about the lack of support that we're getting. And we need more, what do you call this? More opportunities from the government and equal pay, equal rights among creatives, because based on experience, I was not paid. As an artist who toiled and used professional knowledge, I even used my own funds. We produced our high quality output, but we were not compensated. And it's just that it's very sad that we actually have talents. We have people in the Philippines who are really good at what they do, but the government doesn't support them. That's why a lot of artists and even the consumers of art are being discouraged to actually appreciate art because there's no money in that. But artists are currently independently doing something about it, and it's good. And there are people who are actually open-minded and who actually are realizing the importance of art, who are supporting them. So artists are currently independently doing it by themselves because we are not really receiving support from larger departments, larger agencies, or the government. So it's actually sad that I'd like to give you an example. Oh my God, I'm really gonna say this. We were hired. I'm not really gonna mention who they are, but we were hired to perform. We were hired to create props, costumes, and actually get them from actual historical records. So we got ourselves, because they did not offer them to us. They did not provide those to us. But because they were not willing to actually compensate us. Even my sister is currently having a problem that she's a fine arts major, and she was recently emailed by the government to showcase her art, but they were not willing to pay her. And that's sad, and I'm angry about that. And so that's why I'm very, very passionate about arts, the masses actually coming together and forming a community and really raising our voice on the importance of art, especially in the pandemic. We're realizing how art is so important to us. Before the pandemic, we didn't realize that, but after the pandemic, it just proliferated, it just skyrocketed. And I'm very optimistic after this pandemic, because I was also a moderator of a roundtable discussion like a month ago, and it composed of the panelists. The speakers were thespians. They're very excited to work again. They're very excited to perform more again and to work double just for the art scene to go back. And they're that passionate. And I'm telling you that there is talent, there is demand, there is supply. It's just that we need support. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you, Minky. And I also hear that from what you're saying, the importance of the government to form these creator and creative spaces is, aside from the support, it's to incubate and to protect as well the rights of the artists and the creators, and to preserve the talent and to further develop it.
They didn't even give us contracts. No contracts at all, just verbal. And then when we didn't get compensated, we don't have rights anymore.
Well, that's one thing that we can definitely take up for Nayong Pilipino to consider. Chris, what's your input on this?
I think it's important for government to support the creatives, especially now. Actually, even with Nayon and its continuing programs, because Nayon has been around for decades, and they continuously create programs despite the loss of their land, despite the long history of changes. They still have programs to support the creatives and the creative working people working in the creative industries, the cultural workers. So it's good that they're continuing it. Also, I think it's the government should continue to support and create uh, creator hubs or creative hubs like this, because it's part of nation building. I think just the preservation of culture and heritage, it is part of a should be part of a national movement or part of the any program of the government per se. Also, I think also during this time, it's very important because again, the pandemic has affected a lot of sectors, has affected a lot of industries. So if the government does not step in and create programs and create venues and create spaces like this, especially what Nayon is doing, the private sector also cannot uh, economically, financially, they cannot. So programs like this are very welcome. And for me personally, I think any roundtable discussion, any way that we can support, we can engage, we can contribute our insights, our expertise, and now that the government also is open and Nayong Philippine like this has this roundtable discussions, I think we should participate more because again, it is for us. So we should also encourage other creators, other people to participate because there are programs like this. There are movements for creative hubs, for creative programs for people to congregate and exchange ideas for the creative industry. Again, if the fourth industrial revolution is going towards also the creative industries, and what everybody's saying, the consumption of content, the consumption of these creative products is that's it. That's moving everybody forward. Given that the pandemic has put us all at home, so yeah, anything to help it, support it. And it's good that there are programs like this. I think we should continue to be on the lookout for that and support that from at least from the private sector as well.
Thank you, Chris. Allow me to just end this discussion to ask Jasny the same question. Why? Because you're from the government. You're from the government side. So I'd like to hear your perspective on. I mean, you've had so much wonderful insight, but why do you think it is crucial and important for governments to really establish and be proactive? Sort of aggressive in establishing creator and creative spaces for your artists in your country.
Yeah, I mean, my heart goes out to Mingsi and then the kinds of issues she had to face, and it's not unique to maybe to where she's from. It's around the world actually that trying to create a level playing field is a challenge, and the government is plays a difficult balancing role between established industry and new disruptive technologies like new disruptive economies. There's creative, such as digital, etc. So I think Chris said it best just now, where the way that Malaysia looks at it is this, the narrowest of perspectives I can have is the way Malaysia looks at it is very similar to what Chris said. It's a national, it's a nation building effort. So if you want to think about why do we need a national carrier, national projects, infrastructure building, and that kind of economic stimulus that we are trying to create. A creative hub is actually a key part of that, because it is from our perspective, it brings together a unique play of investment, because we're going to attract foreign money to come into the country to invest and be a part of our community. It attracts creatives who may not necessarily have other avenues to pursue. There's a private sector push, and I think what Jinkai is saying is important, because there's obviously a very important piece of the puzzle is the private sector's motives and ambitions itself. But a government is a representative of the people, right? And I think what it should be firmly focused on is trying to build a better place for its people. One of those key economic items, just like building a school or building a great bridge, is building a creative center, not just the physical implementation of which, but the programs and the incentives and the stimulus packages and go with it, because that is a feedback loop that creates more. I do think Malaysia has some perspective in that, but we're still again learning and trying to adapt all the time. COVID was a big one. It really changed all our plans that we had, and trying to adapt to that. And I think for any other country, the Philippines, even Singapore, right, as you're trying to pivot and see what new markets, the reason why we are still invested deeply in creative, at least from Malaysia's standpoint, is because it's a unique sector. It provides a great economic return, but above all, there's a national building element to it. And I think that's I think, if above all, even if you take away all the rest away, the economic bits, the national building part is probably the one that I would say sticks the most.
Thank you, Jasmine. That's very wonderfully put. So we've run out of time for our discussion today. Thank you so much to all our panelists. But to officially close us, may I call on Laya from Nayong Pilipino to officially close the event.
Thank you so much for that, Magu. So the discussion this afternoon certainly illumined us all. Again, I'm Laya. I'm actually a researcher, educator, and creative as well. The Nayong Pilipino Foundation is actually a happy congregation of specialists across disciplines and civil servants being trained in cultural leadership. With me actually answering some of the questions in the chat thread is architect Jess Deswasido. They are directly in charge of the physical development, planning for the physical development of the Plan Hub in Parañaque City, which is once again very near a Ramsar site and wetlands that has currently at the moment 460 trees in a grassland ecosystem. We are very happy that the panelists and attendees stayed with us and joined this conversation. We just like you to know that the Nayong Pilipino Foundation actually shares the pain of creatives. And the foundation longs also for greater social protection and strategic programs that are government initiated with a collaboration of the private sector. We know of this, the precariousness of labor and all the pains that creatives share, even before the pandemic. And so because of this, these circumstances, actually, the pains of being a freelance creative in the Philippines, just to cite an example, necessitates that we look at best practices of hubs of our regions in the ASEAN, neighbors in the ASEAN, Asia, and the world at large. The foundation is really eager to build interagency linkages. Hopefully, we would have more champions from government as well, and SIKAP can help us with that. Nayong Pilipino is really trying to find a way to make creative practice sustainable, and through creativity, also sustain our cities as well. Through a grounded research so that we can get an updated baseline data and benchmarking, I believe that we can strategize and build more resilient creative futures. The foundation aspires to create platforms for nurturing nature and human creativity. So Umpukan sa Nayon is actually part of the participatory design approach of the Nayong Pilipino Foundation. And the foundation endeavors to consult government actors, experts, and the general public so that it can fulfill its duty well and serve the public. So we hope we can continue these conversations, whether it is organized by Nayong Pilipino or SIKAP. And on behalf of the Nayong Pilipino Foundation, we are grateful for the wonderful inputs of our panelists and the attendees who have been asking provocative questions and providing suggestions. So once again, thank you. Just a reminder, please answer the feedback form and give us inputs. What should be the next Umpukan topic of the Nayong Pilipino Foundation and who should be invited? So again, thank you. And I now close this session. Magu?
Thank you so much, Laya. So yeah, I guess that's it. Everybody, thank you so much. And panelists, if we may just stay for, we're Filipino, so we need to have that photo op running among all the
Right.
panelists. So this will not be a Filipino event without any photo taking. So,
Agree.
so thank you, everybody. Yeah, have an amazing and safe weekend.
Stay safe, everyone. There. Are we still being streamed live?
Wala
I
na
think
po.
not. Wala na. Very good, no? Everyone, I just like to introduce, since we're no longer streaming live, I just like to introduce our Executive Director of the Nayong Pilipino Foundation. She's Attorney Kay Malilong Esperto.
Hi. Good afternoon. Like, it was really good to listen to you, and I'm really inspired by what I heard. We're learning a lot. So Nayong Pilipino will turn 50 next year, and we really want those years to count and support cultural workers and creatives. We would really love suggestions as to how government should do its job. It will be budget season soon, so if you tell us what programs you need, then you can help us lobby to ask legislators, the legislators to give us money to implement the programs that you need. One of the things I see is important, is really to change the mindset of a lot of people in government, that art should be free and that exposure is enough. And maybe we can work on like a toolkit to show how government can procure. That's one of the things that they're very slow at. They don't know how to properly obtain artistic services. So they'll just rather get it for free rather than go through the paperwork, which is super wrong, because it's actually in our constitution that the government is the patron of arts and letters and should promote art and cultural heritage. So it's that we need your help to make government do its job better there. So thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Ms. Kay. Thank you. So
Right.
everybody, let's just have a
Yes.
screen cap.
Okay.
Okay. I'll screen cap also. Let me just close the chat box. Ayan. Are we on like a gallery view? How do you do that?
Yes po.
There you go.
Naka-gallery.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Alright.
Jasny. Thank you, Hugh, Nguyen, Chris, Jinkai, Kun. Thank you so much. I think Mixie's internet dropped out. Thank you,
Oh,
and
I see.
Laya and Kay. Thank you so much for this
Thank
opportunity for the
you.
creatives, and for the openness and willingness to hear what's happening outside of the Philippines in terms of the creative spaces. Thank you so much for this
Oh
opportunity.
yeah, we are grateful for the international perspective that we're getting, and we look forward to more of it.
I hope we can work together on something for this. Like, that this is just the beginning of things.
Everybody, if you guys don't mind, if you're open, I'd like to email you sometime maybe next week or the week after, and then maybe we could like set up something like a Creative Hubs committee or council, so that we can help each other
Good,
do
yeah.
best
Yes.
practices and see how we can
Yes.
capacitate each other. That would be something that would be awesome.
Facilitate exchanges and see how
Yes,
we can.
yes.
Yeah.
And to synergize, I think it's important for us in the ASEAN,
Yes.
in our region, to see how we can help bolster each other, and that way create an ecosystem that goes beyond our current borders,
Yes.
right? Because the playing field is international, but maintaining the integrity of our heritage.
Yes, and I think it's that. I think we lack stories about the ASEAN and see how interconnected we are. I mean, all the boundaries are random because of colonization, but we have more
yeah.
stories in common than
Yes.
are popularized.
Yeah, and it's nice that we get to exchange those narratives, be it through games or through art or through whatnot. So I'm really excited, and thank you so much. So please don't be surprised if I start sending you an email in the next 2 weeks.
Looking forward to it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to it.
So thank you.
It's
Thank
a
you
good
so much.
idea, and we look forward to it.
That's a fantastic
it's good
idea. Well, is there something like that already, if I may ask?
There is something for animation. MDEC actually
Oh,
spearheaded that.
but what I'm saying is a congregation of hubs from different parts of
Not
the world.
not with the intention of actually synergizing.
Oh,
We
then
do
we
have
should
some,
start one.
yeah, we do have with the British
Mm-mm-mm.
Council, but it's more for the online community learning labs where I met a good
Yeah,
number of our fellow panelists here from.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
and we're
yes,
not
thank you.
included in that. Actually, the discussions with the British Council, we have not yet been made part of that at any opportunity, as far as I
Okay,
can remember. Yeah,
let
because there
me
is a
do that for
World
you. Yeah.
Urban Parks Federation, so there is
Yes.
something like that. No, so I'm thinking maybe we should start something with the Creative House.
We should, and let's not wait for the West to do it. Let's do it in
Yeah.
in our area first, right? So they can
Yeah.
copy us.
Yeah, and there's CCHA also, which is mainly ASEAN and for heritage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Creative Hub, especially that we can learn off each other. So once again, thank you. I don't want to keep you. I
Yeah.
apologize that we went over time from what we initially sent. That's my fault. I just love the insight and discussions everybody was giving.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, and have a
you're
great
welcome.
day ahead.
Thank
Keep safe,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all.
Bye-bye.
Joel, bye.
Cheers.
Right. Sige. Ayun. Andyan pa ba si Magu? Thank you, Magu, ha? Ay, wala na si Magu.
Wala.
Umalis na.
Oh, so happy weekend, all of you. Thank you, and happy weekend. Di natin naman. Okay. Bye. Ingat kayo.
Everyone, okay.
Bye
Great
po.
work, team. Thank you.
Salamat po.
Mas